welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Beatrice Adams, and at my channel, which is Your Story is Your Mission, I talk everything nonprofit. And I want you to know that you must operate your nonprofit like it is a business. That's why I talk for profit as well. Because if you're not operating your nonprofit like a business, then you ain't got no business. I mean, you will be out of your nonprofit in no time. You must operate your nonprofit with business-like precision. And so, having said all of that, if you would please, before we get into it, we're going to get into the steps that you need to incorporate your nonprofit at the state level, and we're going to actually do the paperwork. I'm at my desk already. You can see I'm at my desk. Last week I said I was going to get to my desk and I didn't get to it, but we're going to do that today, and I'm going to actually show you on my screen how to complete the paperwork at the state level so that you will be able to be approved for a nonprofit. And more importantly, we're going to make sure that paperwork is exactly right so that you will then be able to take that paperwork and be approved at the at the IRS for a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, because it has to have certain things within that paperwork, that incorporation paperwork, for you to be able to be approved at the IRS. So, having said all of that, if you would please subscribe to my channel, I would really appreciate it. Please like my video as well. Now, if you do not like my video, just don't like it, but please comment and let me know why you don't like it, because I'm always looking to improve. So, again, I'm going to take you to that paperwork, but first let me say, I have to apologize. Last week, I was having technical difficulties. Last week, I was going to actually go to my computer and show you right then in that video how to incorporate your nonprofit at the state level, and then how to complete your provisions, everything that you need to do that. We were going to go over business name search, making sure that your business, the name that you choose, is available at your state. And so I was going to do that, but I had technical difficulties. I could not get that video to act right. And let me tell you something, I can operate a computer, but I cannot fix a computer. They have people for that. Like, I'm telling you, like, all my children, they're all tech geniuses. I mean, we think all of our children are, but they really are. They grew up in a different era where that's all they do. So they can fix the computer. they can analyze it. They can figure out what's going on. But not me. So I apologize for not getting onto my computer, but we're going to do that today. I promise you. So hang in there with me, and we're going to get that done right now. So let's go ahead. I'm at my computer. Don't have to even walk here. I'm here, and we're going to get started.
Okay, guys, we are at my computer. And as you can see, I like to use Google Chrome or Google as my search engine because it's just a really nice, clean slate. I know there are other search engines like MSN that is a wonderful search engine, but there's a lot of news on it. And honestly, I just get really caught up reading everything that's on that platform, and I don't get anything done. So that's why I like to use Google. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to search for your business name, your company name, your nonprofit's name. It's all the same platform that you're going to use to do that. But we're going to search to see if your nonprofit name is available at your state. And so here we're just going to click in. Now, all of this is just Google's thing, but I don't get caught up in reading that. So what we're going to do is just type in North Carolina, Secretary of State. North Carolina is where I am. And as you can see, it already pre-fills, and if you look down here, it even says North Carolina Secretary of State Business Search. But of course, you can just click at the end of that, so you don't have to do a lot of typing. If you just want to you can type in business search. As you can see again, it pre-fills. The algorithm knows what we are thinking. I'm convinced. It's like it knows everything. Why am I whispering? But no. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and enter there. And as you can see, the very first thing that comes up is North Carolina Secretary of State Business Registration Search. That's what we're needing. So we're going to click on that. And then here we get to the Secretary of State's website for the business search. And here we can see all of the names that's registered, or we can check to see if the name that you want for your nonprofit is available. Right here, you see where it says select what you want to search. You want it to stay at company. Now we can click down and have that drop down come up for us if you wanted to search by registered agents, company officials, or assumed business names. You could do that, but in this case, we're going to select company. Now, keep in mind, nonprofit, for profit, it's all the same. So that's why it just says company. Here, you can see select how you want to search. We're going to leave it as starting with. Now, if I made that drop down, you can see exact. We don't want to have to type in anything exact. So we just want to be able to type in a couple of words and see what comes up. And we don't want to use this SOSID. That is the number that your state will assign your articles of incorporation once they actually incorporate it. So that will be your ID number for your state, and that will represent your nonprofit. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to leave it at starting with. And here, in searching for, let's just type in the name that I used in my previous video, which is Pretty Paws Foundation. So let's just see if that's available. So we're going to click on search. Now, great. You can see that there were no records found. Pretty Paws Foundation. That means that that name is available for you to use. Now, let me show you what happens if we type in something. Let's just say you just want it to be Pretty Paws Ink. So we're going to type in Pretty Paws. Let's not even type in ink, because again, we don't want it to be exact. We just want starting with. So we're just going to type in Pretty Paws Ink, but excuse me, Pretty Paws, but in your name, you know you want it to be ink. Let's just do a search there. Now, as you can see, Pretty Paws Ink is not available. Now, so you would not be able to use that. You could do some things like, let's do this. Okay, let's search again. Let's type in the Pretty Paws Ink. Let's just put it all in there. So yeah, you just cannot use it. No matter how you try to deviate, you cannot use that, but you can make more precise switches to your name, which is the Pretty Paws Foundation. So that is something that you could add the word foundation. You can even make it incorporated if you wanted to. I recommend that entity. But here we go. So see, as you can see, the Paws Foundation Incorporate is available. And see, record search. So there we go. So we've got that done and that looks good. So what we're going to do now is go ahead to your Articles of Incorporation and I'm going to show you how to complete that. Okay, guys, here we are at the same place that we left off after we've just completed the business search. Excuse me, the name search for your nonprofit. As you can see, we're still on that page. Now, if you'll look over to the right, what you're looking for are forms. So this is forms and the fees. This is what we want to click on because we're trying to get to the Articles of Incorporation. So we're going to click there. And now, as you can see, you've got forms, it's business registration. If you'll just click on that, you see the drop down. You don't want any of this, certainly not lobbying for or charities. You don't want lobbying for nonprofits for sure. But so we're going to leave this as business registration. That's what we want to do. And as you can see here, business entities common, we do not want that. We're looking for nonprofit corporation because those are the forms we're needing. So we're going to go down here and click on nonprofit corporations. And then we're just going to scroll down. And as you can see, all of the forms referencing nonprofits is coming up. But what we're wanting to do is we want the Articles of Incorporation for nonprofit because that's what we're trying to accomplish. And as you can see, I mentioned in the other video that it's a $60 fee at North Carolina's Secretary of State's office. Now, I also mentioned that you don't want to pay a site to help you incorporate your nonprofit because that's just an additional fee that you will incur. The form, as you can see, it's right here. It's going to cost you $60 in the cost of mailing, an envelope and the stamp. Now, there are a lot of sites, including North Carolina. You can actually register so that you can incorporate online. Well, let me just take that back. I'm not 100% sure about North Carolina. I'm a paper paper person. I always use their forms. So in this case, that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to go ahead and click on Articles of Incorporation. And as you can see, it opened up as a PDF here. So we're just going to click on that and open it up. And this is going to allow you to actually start typing on this form. Now, this is what I mentioned in the previous video. All forms come with instructions, instructions for completing articles of incorporation, nonprofit corporation. This is so important because as you can see, all the lists here, it tells you exactly what to do. For example, see, this is item number 1. Enter the complete and accurate corporate name for the nonprofit corporation. The name may include a corporate ending, and what they mean by that is it could include Inc. or Incorporated or what have you. So that's item number 1. If you'll go here, it's telling you how to complete number 1. And it goes on and on. Number 2, it's telling you how to go down here, and that's telling you right there, number 2. The instructions tell you how to complete that. So we're going to start here. Now, one thing I want to urge you to do is always read everything. Do not assume that you know what it's saying. Always read the everything that's on the forms. Read the instructions if you need to. Now, there may be cases where you don't need to actually reference the instructions, but always read because you don't want to make any guesses here. So this says pursuant to 55A-2-02 of the General Statutes of North Carolina, the undersigned corporation does hereby submit these articles of incorporation for the purpose of forming a nonprofit corporation. Excellent. That's what we want to do. So number 1, the name of the nonprofit corporation is. So we already did a business search on the name Pretty Paws Foundation. We're going to put Pretty Paws Foundation and we're going to do Inc. We're going to add that ending there. So because you're incorporating it, so it's fitting that that be Inc. Now, I'm not actually doing this, but I'm just using Pretty Paws. This is all an example. So we're going to put Pretty Paws Foundation Inc. We know that name is clear. Now we're going to go here. It says check only if applicable. The corporation is a charitable or religious corporation as defined in North Carolina General Statute 55A, blah, blah, blah. So I said read it, but I know what it says. You guys read it. Don't say blah, blah, blah. So we're going to check that. That is non-negotiable. You have to check that the corporation is a charitable or religious corporation because that is what the IRS is going to be looking for. Whenever you file your paperwork at the IRS, their charitable division, whenever you file that 501c3 paperwork, which is a Form 1023, they're going to be looking to see how you organized at the state or how you incorporated at the state. And it needs to be incorporated as a charitable or religious corporation. Now, as we get into your provisions or what have you, your provisions and your bylaws or what have you is probably more or less going to say organized as a charitable, scientific, educational, religious corporation. Like it can be any of those four. But for these purposes, you have got to check that box because that's a must, or you're not going to be approved at the IRS as a 501c3. Now, again, you have any questions about that? You just go up to number 2 and you just see, well, okay, what does that mean? Charitable or religious corporation means any corporation that is exempt under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, and so on and so forth. And again, like I said, this is not a guessing game. The instructions tell you everything you need to know. So you can really feel confident that you're doing everything accurately and that you're going to get this back with that date stamp on it from the state that says you are formed as a nonprofit or incorporated as a nonprofit. Number 3, the name of the initial registered agent is. Now, what a registered agent is, that's the person who's going to be getting any legal information that may come in the mail that needs to be delivered to the agent on behalf of the nonprofit. That's what they mean by initial registered agent. Now, you do not have to get a registered agent in another state like Nevada or whatever and have them be your registered agent and you're paying them to be your registered agent. You don't need to do that. You can be your own registered agent. And so we're going to go ahead and put John Smith. Let's just make up a name, John Smith. So, number 4, the street address and county of the initial registered agent's office of the corporation is. So, in this case, let's just make up a name, 350 John Smith Lane. He's popular, so he has a lane named after him. And now we're going to put in the city. Let's just put in Raleigh and North Carolina zip code. I'm just going to make one up, 27600. And I happen to know that that Raleigh is in Wake County, so I'm just going to go ahead and put in, Wake as the county. Now, here it says the mailing address, if different from the street address of the initial registered agent's office. Now, as you can see here, you're not able to you have to put the street address here, but if different, this section allows you to actually put a PO box. So if you have a PO box that you use, even if it's your personal, you're not using an outside registered agent, it's your PO box, then you can go ahead and certainly put PO box here. If it's going to be the same, this is what I always do. That's just as an extra precaution. I just type same as above, just so the state will know I did actually see this and I acknowledge that, but the address is same as above. Again, you don't have to type anything because it says the mailing address if different from the street address. I'm going to go ahead and do what I do. I'm just going to leave it same as above. All right, so we don't need to do anything else there. Now here, number 5, the name and address of each incorporator is as follows. Now this will be you. This is the person who is actually pulling this nonprofit together. You are the one that is telling the state that you want this nonprofit to be formed. You are incorporating it at the state. This case is John Smith. And his address, we're just going to put the same, John Smith Lane. Now you don't want to come here and put LN. That's gonna, see, that's different. Remember in the last video I said you've got to be concise. You do and precise. You do not want to make errors like that. It's not really an error, but it is to the state. Like they're gonna kick that back and email you and say, what's the what's the deal here? And then remember I said you can't break it, you just fix it. So 350 John Smith Lane. And then that is Raleigh, North Carolina, 27600. Now you see how this form adjusted for all of that extra letters. it's going to look a little wacky to you, but it's okay. It's the state's form. They know that it'll adjust that way, and as long as it is accurate and everything is spelled precisely, you're good to go. Now, number 6, check either A or B below. A, the corporation will have members. B, the corporation will not have members. I always select A, the corporation will have members. Keep in mind that your board of directors, which you have to have when forming a nonprofit, they're made up of members. So you want to select the corporation will have members. What it's really more pointing to, though, than the board of directors is when you actually add members to your nonprofit, you bring people on your board. You can have nonprofits that have 10, 20 members. I don't know. But they are board members, and keep in mind the most important thing about board members to me is that they can vote you in and they can vote you out. So you want to be absolutely very careful about who you add to your board. You want to make sure that they are on the same page as you are as far as the mission, vision, and goals of your nonprofit. And you want them to have that, they're going to go by the bylaws. You want the members to be on point. I mean, you want them. You really do need members to keep you transparent and so on and so forth. So that's not a bad thing. Now, you can opt to have the corporation will not have members. You can do whatever you want, but I always say the corporation will have members. Now, number 7, attached are provisions. This is important. Attached are provisions regarding the distribution of the corporation's assets upon its dissolution. In the case that something would happen to you, you're not the, or I don't know, the nonprofit just goes belly up. It's just not able to get the donations that you need. You have a few assets though. Once it dissolves, the provisions say exactly how it is to be dissolved as far as your assets. Like what other nonprofit that is probably most comparable to yours will get your assets upon your dissolution. So that is what the provisions are for. This is extremely important. The IRS will not approve your 501c3 tax exempt status without having your provisions and the exact wording that it needs to have in order to make everything happen or to approve you as tax exempt. So we're going to go over that. This is a different form that you'll attach. Now, I actually type mine, but the state has a form that you'll use for the provisions, and so we're going to go over that. Number 8, any other provisions which the corporation elects to include are attached. Now, if you have anything that you don't feel that the provisions that the state provides, or in my case, the ones that I type up, which are like the states, just a little, a little different, but anything that you need to add, they give you the option to do that. Now, number 9, and let's just do this before we go to number 9. Number 7, let's just go up to number 7 and see. So, about provisions. So it says attach the provisions for the nonprofit regarding the distribution of assets upon dissolution. And here it tells you N14 has a sample provisions for your use as a guide. Now that sample provisions, you're going to have to take that form and we're going to look at that. But I always, again, I type mine out, but that's good. They're going to tell you exactly what it needs to say. And without those provisions, not only will you not get approved as a 501c3 tax exempt organization, you will not get approved as a nonprofit at the state level. So it's very important. Number 9, the street address and county of the principal office of the corporation is. Now, this is where you will be actually physically running your nonprofit. It could be your home for now, especially with COVID. We've had to adapt and do a lot of things different. You may just not be able to afford a building or outside office or facility right now for your nonprofit. So, more than likely, this is going to be your street address. So the first option here is principal office telephone number. So this could be your cell phone number, what have you, whatever you're going to be using to run your nonprofit. I'm just making one up here, as you can see. And then the number and street. So this is the address, and it's going to be the same one here. This is, so it's 350 John Smith Lane, and that was Raleigh, North Carolina. I think it was 27600. Yeah. So again, we want to make sure that is precise. Again, you don't want to come here and make any errors. You don't want to come here and even you don't want to come here and do this number. It needs to be exactly what's on the form. Like it needs to be capitalized. We need to be precise. All right, so we've got that. So that's the principal office, and excuse me, see what I did there? Error. You don't want to do that. Let's fix that. So it's Raleigh, North Carolina, 27600. We're going to remove that. And there's no such thing as an error as long as you don't give up. Like you can make errors, go back and forth with the state until you get it corrected, but just don't give up, because we all make mistakes and you get mad, like, I can't believe I typed all of that on the same line, or I forgot to, or misspelled Raleigh. I spelled that 100 times. It's okay to make mistakes. Again, as long as you learn from those mistakes. So just correct it. Be patient with yourself, be patient with the state. They've got a lot going on, and just let's make it happen. Think about the end result, which is how many people you're going to help, or the earth that you're going to clean up, or what have you. So let's just make sure I have that right. And you're going to do a lot of scrolling. You're going to make sure all of this is correct. So I have 350 John Smith Lane. So it's 350 John Smith Lane, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27600. And again, that's Wake County. Now, here we are again. The mailing address, if different from the street address of the principal office. Again, you don't have to put anything here. I just like to, again, put same as above. And again, that's just my little quirk. I like to let the state know that I actually saw that. I wasn't ignoring it. So I just put same as above just because I want them to know. It's the same. It's no issues. But keep in mind again, if you happen to have a PO box that you use, aside from your street address, this is where you will put it. So that's actually a good thing here. But if you don't, just put same as above. Now, number 10, this is optional, okay? Here you can list the officers. Now, your officers are made up of your board. Your board is made up of 3. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But in this case, I just want to kind of get through this really quickly, and I'll talk about this afterwards, the board of directors. In this case, we're going to put John Smith. Now, if John Smith happened to want to add Katie Smith as an incorporating officer, he can certainly do that. But let me tell you, if he adds Katie Smith, then Katie has to be with John when he goes to the bank to open up a nonprofit. It doesn't matter if Katie is in Greensboro, North Carolina, and John is in Raleigh. When they go to that bank, they have to be together. See, go up here to number 10, and it says, this field is being provided in order to assist business entities in identifying its company officials and complying with federal banking regulations. Again, if John wants Katie to be here listed as an officer, then Katie has to be with John when he goes to the bank. So keep that in mind. But guys, in this case, we're not going to have Katie here. Now, when I prepare the Articles of Incorporation for someone, I do like to add another person that's going to be on the board. It it can cause difficulty again when they go to the bank, but it's all about transparency, guys. Like when you go to the bank, you don't want John Smith to be able to go in with $5,000 in donations or $500 or $50 for that matter, and open up a bank account because, and I'm not saying this will happen, but hey, let's be real. $50 could wind up being a $20 deposit into the organization's new nonprofit checking account. So we want all transparency, we want all accountability. So it's always good to have another person listed here, so that when they John goes to the bank, John has to make sure he takes Katie with him. You may want to make sure that person is close to you, like whoever you're selecting to be on your board of directors, you would want them to be close to you, if physically located, so that they will be able to easily get there and meet with you, with the bank. I know with us, with our foundation, all three of us were listed. Now that I see they've changed it, but we were all three listed as officers, and we all had to be there when we open up the nonprofit checking account. But in this case, again, if that's going to be difficult for you, let's go ahead and just list John Smith. So we're going to put his address, and that's Raleigh, North Carolina. Let's say John Smith is the president. Now, let me just stop here for a moment. When you are incorporating your nonprofit at the state, and as far as becoming a 501c3 tax exempt organization, you must have 3 members on your board. That's a requirement for the state. You're not going to get approved at the state unless you have 3 members. So you may want to have, you don't have to list them here, but you want to go ahead and get that in order, because as you go into your 501c documentation, you're going to need all of these people in place. So we might want to have John Smith. I'm just going to type it here. I'm not going to have these people on here, but we're going to have John Smith as the president, Katie Smith as the treasurer, and then we're going to have Tom Banks, I don't know, as the secretary. Now, I'm not going to list them here, but this is just to show you again that your board of directors must be made up of 3 individuals. That is let's change them to executive director. I just like that, but we could be president, it doesn't matter. But most nonprofits have an acting executive director, but you have to have a president, executive director, someone on that level. Then you must have a treasurer and a secretary. So you can kind of play around with this title. Again, it can be president, you know, you could be president and executive director. And of course, as long as the bylaws allow for that, we'll get into that. That's has to do with the 501c3 tax exempt um, approval documentation. But we can have John Smith as president and executive director, but you must have this, you must have a treasurer, and you must have a secretary. That is not out, no negotiation there. So we're going to take out these names because that's not what we want on this form. We don't want to do that. We're going to take all of this out, and we're just going to have John Smith here listed as an officer so that when he goes to the bank, he doesn't have to have the other 2 people along with him. Again, I recommend you having at least one other person listed here so that all the money that you're depositing in your new nonprofit checking account actually makes it to the bank. I'm not trying to be funny, but hey, let's just be real. Number 11, optional. Please provide a business email address. If you have one, if it's just personal, absolutely put it here, because that's how the Secretary of State is going to communicate with you if there's an error, or even once they've incorporated, they've date stamped and everything, your nonprofit's good to go at the state level, they're going to actually email you the forms showing that you were incorporated. They're not going to mail it to you. I mean, they will if you don't put anything here. And of course, if there's an error that you've made, they're going to communicate with you via mail. And that's snail mail. Like it's really slow. You don't want to take up any more time than you need to when you're incorporating your nonprofit. So I like to provide an email. See, it says the Secretary of State's office will email the business automatically at the address provided at no charge when a document is filed. And again, the email provided will not be viewable on the website. So you're good to go. For more information on why this service is being offered, please see the instructions for this document. Now, if you want to just go up here and see what they're talking about, certainly right here, number 11. All right. But this is a free service. They're not going to charge you for this or anything. So I always like to put that on Smith at gmail.com. Now I'm sure there's probably a real John Smith, but just making up that name. So we're going to put that so that John Smith will get all the documentation. He'll get his articles of incorporation when they have indeed been date stamped and incorporated at the state, and or he'll get an email from a nice state representative that says, "Hey, there's an error here on your documentation. Let's fix this for you." Okay. Remember, I said be timely in fixing everything. Do not waste time on that because you do not want to lose your money. They can't hold your documentation forever. So you want to be timely in responding to them. And all right, so number 12, these articles will be effective upon filing unless a future time and or date is specified. I always leave this blank. I don't want to specify a future time or a date. I just want it to be effective when they say, hey, we've date stamped this, you're good to go. So we're good there. Make sure you put the date. Let's see, the date is the 22nd. This is the 22nd day of March and it's 2023. So you want to put that there. Be sure, guys, here, incorporator business entity name. Make sure it's typed exactly the same as above. Pretty Paws Foundation Inc. All right. So that's incorporator business entity name. This will be left for the signature of incorporator. Now here you're going to type or print incorporator's name and title, if any. So there may not be a title, but we have a name, but we have a title in this case. And we're going to say John Smith, and we're going to put president and executive director. Remember again, I told, oops, made a little error there. I told you how that form will adjust. So we're going to make sure we have this right. John Smith, President and Executive Director. You don't want to say Executive Director and President. You want to say John Smith, President and Executive Director. And guess what, guys? We're done. Now all you have to do, we've completed the form. I always save it onto my computer. Save this on your computer, guys. You just do a right click, save as, and then you can select whatever comes up. But in this case, I'm doing a live thing, so it's not going to let me do that. But yeah, so make sure you save this. Again, download it, what have you, print it. I always print it out because you're going to have to sign it clearly and then mail it in. So you want to first save it onto your computer. You can right click and on your mouse and click save as. You can even just click download and then save it from there. But once you do that, be sure to print the form so that then you can then sign it as the incorporator. Then what you want to do is go get write a check or get a cashier's check, what have you, and complete it. Make it out for the amount referenced, which is $60. And then it says the document must be filed with the Secretary of State. It doesn't tell you who to make it out to, but guys, you're going to make it out to Secretary of State. I always put North Carolina Secretary of State. That's how I make out my checks or my cashier's checks. That's how I have them make it out at the bank. I put North Carolina or NC Secretary of State. You would want to do the same. So then again, that's $60. And then here, the address is right here. This is where you're going to mail it. Business registration division, and then their PO box or what have you. Now, having said all of that, I digress. I want to make sure that I forgot I need to talk about one other piece that needs to go with this, and this is that's the provisions. Do not mail this form without those provisions. So I'm sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself there. So we got the form, we've got this printed out, we've got it saved to our computer. Now we need to address the provision. Okay, so here we are with the provisions. And remember when we talked about provisions? Let's see, number 7, attached are provisions. And it actually has a form in the instructions that you can use. And again, I always type mine. I just have a set that I use that I like and it works. And if it's not broken, don't fix it. But in this case, we're just going to go here, item number 7. Again, that was number 7, and they're talking about provisions. It's so hard for me to say that word with that darn N and S, but so we go up here to provisions and see over here. Okay, let's just read this. Attach the provisions for the nonprofit regarding the distribution of assets upon dissolution. Form N14 has sample provisions for your use as a guide. Now, so what we're going to do, I'm just going to go back, click up here, over here, because I'm still on this page at the North Carolina Secretary of State's office where I clicked on forms and fees. And that was form N14. Let's make sure. N14, yeah. So as you can see, these are all in order. N01, N02, N03. We're just going to scroll all the way down here until we get to N14. Now, see, it's a little it doesn't say provisions. You would kind of think it would say provisions, but it doesn't. Tax exempt status information. Now, if you'll see here, it says information regarding the purposes, the prohibited activities, and dissolution provisions for a nonprofit corporation seeking 501c3 designation with IRS. This is what we need. And we know it because the instructions said it. Remember, instructions, 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 guys. So we'll click on that. It's no cost because this is just added to what you're filing with the state. You're only going to pay the state $60. This is just an addition. As you can see again, this opened up as a PDF. Their PDFs will allow you to type in the information. So here we are, Department of Secretary of State, Business Registration Division, 501c3 attachment. That tells you right there, guys. If you do not attach the provisions, number one, you're not going to get approved at the state. But number two, you're not going to be approved at the IRS level as a 501c3 tax exempt organization. So this is very important. Now, remember, read, read, read. Now, I'm not going to read it because I already know what is saying. I'm sorry. But let's just read this first little part. The attached provisions may be incorporated by reference into Articles of Incorporation of a nonprofit by entering see attached provisions in item number 9 on the Secretary of State's standard form for Articles of Incorporation for nonprofit incorporations. So let's just do what it says. So it says here, what was that? It was item number 9. So that's number 9. It's saying, I don't really actually, I don't know why it says that, but because that doesn't actually reference the right one, that's principal of office. But here, if you just want to type, see attached, now, all right, most people don't have typewriters. I have one, but most people don't have one. So right out beside it, you can just put in parentheses. Right out beside this word dissolution, you can just write in parentheses, see attached provisions. It's not necessary. They're going to see it because guess what? It's attached. So they're not going to ignore pages just because you didn't write in see attached. Don't really know why that says that. This is important though, guys. Do not file this general information sheet as part of your of incorporation. All right. It says this should not be interpreted as advice from the department that the information in this form is appropriate for inclusion. And so that's why uh, I type up my own and I attach it. Now I don't have to retype it every time I do this for a client because it's going to be the same once you get it. But don't worry about it. I mean, let's just go down here. I'm going to show you what the provisions look like. So this is really just like some really important, as it says, general information, but it's really important general information. Be sure to read everything. And if we scroll down here, what you're going to do is you're going to actually get to the meat of the form. Now, these are provisions. This is what that is. And we're going to kind of go through this. So provisions, again, I've seen people that come to me and they want to form a nonprofit. They've used this form and it's worked. So, you know, just go in here and click it. Don't and use it. It's fine. Again, I don't use it, but it's fine to use. They're not going to make up stuff. They know what they know what the IRS needs when it comes to provisions, and they know what they need at the state. So it's okay to use this form. So purpose of corporate again, I write in parentheses provisions so that they will know at the state that this is what I'm saying are my provisions. Purpose of corporation. This corporation is organized for the following purposes. Check as applicable. So whatever's applicable. See all of this? See on that incorporation form, it just mentioned charitable and religious. It's really more things that you can select. If it's educational, you're creating some type of school, you can certainly do that. Testing for public safety, scientific, literary, fostering national or international amateur sports competition, and or prevention of cruelty to children or animals. So it could be for any of these, but in this case, we're just going to put charitable because if you're starting a food pantry or what have you, it's just going to be charitable. Of course, if you're starting a ministry or a church, it would be religious. But in this case, it will be charitable because we're starting Pretty Paws Foundation, right? So that's what we're going to do. Again, we want to write in the words provisions up here, but guys, you also want to write in I like to use labels though, Avery labels or whatever kind of labels. I like to actually print that out. So I would actually also write or use a label to print out Pretty Paws Foundation Inc., the name of that. And then underneath it, page 3 of whatever, however many pages that was. I think that was 3 pages, 2 pages, the Articles of Incorporation. And that's not necessary, but I would definitely put Pretty Paws Foundation over here, and I'd put provisions right here, or provisions for Pretty Paws Foundation Inc. So we've got the charitable here, we've got that clicked. Now, as you can see, here it says including for such purposes the making of distributions to organizations that qualify as exempt organizations under Section 501c3 and 176c2 of the Internal Revenue Code, so on and so forth. Be sure to read all of that. This is very important because your bylaws have to mimic these words. Prohibited activities. This goes into things that you cannot do as a nonprofit. The IRS will not allow you to do it. And if you are found to be doing it, then the IRS will dissolve your nonprofit. So it's important. Read this. Prohibited activities. Let's just read part of this. No part of the net earnings of the corporation shall inure to the benefit of or be distributable to its members, directors, officers, or other private persons, except that the corporation shall be authorized and empowered to pay reasonable compensation for services rendered, so on and so forth. So this is really important. Be sure to read all of this because it's telling you you're not a for-profit. You can't distribute money to your members or directors or offices or any private persons for their benefit. You cannot do that. However, you can pay them a reasonable compensation. So you can do that. Your bylaws will mimic this. So certainly you can pay your people, you can pay yourself, but it has to be reasonable compensation, and the board will vote on that. So we'll get into all that with your bylaws. But again, this is very important information, so be sure to read it. Make sure you read all of it. It talks about lobbying or legislation. You can't influence it. You can't do any of that. You can't take on, say, hey, I'm really supporting this particular candidate that's running for office. Your nonprofit cannot do that. So you want to be very careful and be sure to read all of this, okay? So here it tells you, see, any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office, like you can't have any activities like that. Your nonprofit cannot. And I would not do it if you're incorporating this. I wouldn't I wouldn't like go and support as my personal self a particular representative, and I know I own a nonprofit. I mean, you just don't want to make any errors like that or have anyone cross-referencing and, oh, hey, so and so was here from Pretty Paws Foundation, but you were there as yourself, but they knew you had a foundation. They mentioned you just don't want to do that. You don't want to risk being dissolved as at the IRS level. Once you get your 501(c)(3), my goodness, that's a lot. So it's a lot to be proud of. It's a big accomplishment. You do not want to risk any of that. So now the last page, distributions upon dissolution. Again, this is what we talked about earlier when we were completing the Articles of Incorporation. It says, upon the dissolution of the corporation, the board of directors shall, after paying or making provision for the payment of all the liabilities of the corporation, dispose of all of the assets of the corporation exclusively for the purposes of the corporation in such manner, so on and so forth. And what it's saying is you have to dissolve it in the manner or to a charitable organization that is religious or charitable or educational, scientific. Like it has to be a like-minded charity. If it's not, it all has to be dissolved. You have to follow Section 501(c)(3). All of this is very important. Um, that you get this information in there and be sure to read all of that because it says how you exactly exclusively how the nonprofit is to be dissolved if you should so get to that point and you need to dissolve it. But that's it, guys. I mean, that's it. We've completed your of incorporation in its entirety. Be sure to download or right click and save. Well, this one actually won't let you right click and save, but you can print. So just download it, save it to your computer, and then be sure to print this and put it behind your articles. It is an attachment. Be sure to put provisions for Pretty Paws Foundation Incorporated, or put it over here, but put attachment since I did not mention attachment. I don't think you have to. This is not going to stop anything, but go ahead and do it anyway. You want to make sure you get everything in here. You don't want any questions. So there you have it. We've got everything taken care of. I thank you so much for going through this information with me. I know it was a little consuming. However, thank you for hanging in there with me and sticking it out. I hope you will have subscribed to my channel and I hope you have liked the channel. Again, if you don't like it, please comment and let me know why so I can make improvements. I'm always looking to improve, and I will see you in the next video.